Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Kirkpatrick, and for my public health nutrition PSA video, I chose the South Australia Right Bite Healthy Kids policy, and I will tell you more about it. So, the official title of the Right Bite policy is Right Bite Healthy Food and Drink Supply Strategy for South Australian Schools and Preschools. And this is a government policy um, that was originally published in January of 2008. However, since it was updated in 2013 and then again in 2015 as a result of some new policies and research that had been put out. And that this policy was developed as a result of the Eat Well South Australia Healthy Eating Guidelines for Schools and Preschools. And its target population, as you may could guess, is school and preschool age students in South Australian government schools and preschools. However, it's important to note that this policy is additionally supported by independent schools as well as some other entities. And the primary goal of this policy is to assist South Australian government schools to select food and drinks that promote healthy eating. So it wants these schools to have options for these students to make the choices to eat healthier. So how exactly does this program work? Well, it helps South Australian schools and preschools select foods and drinks that are offered in those schools by placing foods into 3 categories. And those categories are green, which students are supposed to choose plenty, amber, which they're supposed to select carefully, and red, which are only supposed to be eaten on occasion. So now I'll go into a little bit more detail on those 3 categories that I just mentioned. The green category, as I said, students are supposed to choose plenty. These tend to be veggies and fruits, beans, certain types of bread, rice, milk, and yogurt. And these are deemed to be an excellent source of important nutrients. They are low in saturated fat, sugar, and salt. And eating enough of these foods will help avoid excessive caloric intake. The amber category, as I stated earlier, students are supposed to select carefully, and these tend to be full-fat dairy foods, spreads, snack bars, and things of that nature. They have some nutritional value and contain moderate amounts of saturated fat, sugar, and salt, and they can, if eaten in large serving sizes, lead to excess caloric intake. And the red foods, which students are supposed to only eat occasionally, have actually been banned from sale in South Australian schools and preschools. However, they can be provided by the school at whole school functions at a maximum of 2 times per term. These tend to be your fried foods, ice creams, and any drink containing caffeine. These have been deemed that they lack any sort of adequate nutritional value. They are high in saturated fat, sugar, and salt, and can easily contribute to excess caloric intake. So, since the Right Bite policy is a school policy, it is rooted in education. And one of its aims is to teach children and students the components of building a healthy diet. And it does this by linking it to school and preschool curriculums. However, it does this in a different way for a preschool child than it would for an older student. For the preschool age child, it would accomplish this by teaching children about healthier food choices and this may encourage them to try new foods. For an older student, even though the policy does not mandate that a school has to do this, it provides suggestions for maybe planting a school garden and teaching students about healthy food that way, and also teaching them about sustainability. So, in my opinion, I think the implementation of this policy is where things get a little bit tricky. because beyond the banning of the foods that have been placed in the red category, it's up to the individual school and preschool communities to decide how they want to use these guidelines that are outlined in the Right Bite policy, to how they want to use them to encourage healthy eating habits for their students. There is a healthy eating guideline document that's attached with the Right Bite policy that does provide a framework for schools and preschools to develop their own healthy eating policy. But I think with something like nutrition, it can be very tricky to implement because there are individual dietary needs and limitations. So I think with any sort of wide-scale nutrition policy like this one, it has to be very broad and almost lenient in what it tries to tell people what they can and cannot do. Even though the Right Bite policy is a government policy, the individual healthy eating programs at the individual schools and preschools are funded by the schools themselves. This is done primarily through fundraising. The Right Bite policy encourages non-food fundraising to involve the parents, students, and the faculty at the individual schools and communities. Additionally, school sites can create partnerships with food industry and other related organizations to include sponsorship arrangements, but only if the food items include foods that are in the green and amber categories. Overall, I would say the Right Bite policy has had mixed reviews. According to a case study that was published in 2014, the respondents to this case study all claimed that the Right Bite policy has merits. However, obstacles have prevented achieving the greatest potential uptake and implementation. The difficulties that were primarily found were resistance from parents and children to purchase healthy foods, difficulties that are associated with serving and preparing fresh food at the schools themselves, inadequate canteen facilities, and additionally, what's always a problem with these healthy food policies, or an obstacle rather, is counteracting the heavy marketing of unhealthy foods that is projected to children. And all of those combined have led to obstacles to implementing the Right Bite policy. So overall, I would say that the limitations of the Right Bite policy are the ones that I just previously mentioned, the obstacles that are impeding the implementation. Additionally, some limitations would be funding. As I stated earlier, these schools are required to provide the funds themselves for their own healthy food or healthy eating policies. So I would imagine that a school that's in a more wealthy district would have a higher chance of success than one that may be in more of a food desert, so that would be a concern for me. Additionally, some personal concerns that I have with this particular program is, although I fully support the idea of teaching nutrition to children from a very young age and healthy eating habits and how to build the foundations for a healthy lifestyle, I do have some concerns about the labeling and the categorizing of foods as the way that they are, especially with the red category, because I think it has the potential to lead to a student having a disrupted relationship with food, and that's always a concern of mine. Whenever you try to label foods as good or bad, anything in excess or not enough is going to be harmful. But I think that the restrictive mindset can potentially have unforeseen problems down the road. So those are my concerns, and as far as the limitations of the right bite policy go. And these are my references. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on the right bite policy.